My name is Amy Hubbard and I come from a company called Capia Consulting Group. We've been around for nearly 10 years now and people call us all things from Capia to Capiche to Caprioska. There's the name of a cocktail or something at an IAP2 conference about 8 years ago in Glasgow. So we get called all sorts of things, but because I've got a captive audience, we are called Capia Consulting Group and we are from Melbourne. So today, thank you, Jamie, for the introduction. I think you got most of it right. I'm joined by my colleagues and friends, Agata and Niamh, and we also have Molly at the back of the room. So she's got a whole lot of resources available to you when you're departing our session this morning. So let's inject a little bit of energy in the room because I know you all love icebreakers. People that work in community engagement love icebreakers. You don't go, huh, like the community do. I can see you're already being elevated at the thought of meeting new people. I want you to get up and go and meet one person you don't know. Some people like Kim White or Ann Patillo. It's going to be difficult. Go and find one person you don't know and share with them what you love about community engagement, what you love about community engagement. Doesn't work.
Ellen DeGeneres stuff. Get out.
Okay, that's enough breaking of the ice. I'll invite you to sit back down, say goodbye to your newest friend or associate, and take a seat back down and we'll get started. Okay, I've got everyone's attention. Kim and Anne actually met people they didn't know. I can't believe it. I can't believe it. Good on you. Look, just a little bit about who we are and why we're here. Capia is about 10 years old. We're about 9.5 years old now. We've got a 10-year party will be next year and we'll extend an invitation to all of you. We've done about 500 or so community engagement projects. We all have technical backgrounds, so we have a lot of urban planners. We've got 2 architects now, urban designers, people with backgrounds in social research. So we're a bit of a different mix, but we all are community engagement specialists. 20 people, and we're a very, very proud B Corporation. So if you don't know what a B Corporation is, I suggest you look it up because we have very high ethics in terms of how we work with communities and also about our impact on the environment. Jamie is nodding at me because he is also a B Corporation. So just about why we're here, we are community engagement specialists. It's core to everything that we do. And we don't do community engagement to manage a message or to change how governments work. Capia does community engagement very well, I should say, I'm the CEO, because we want to have positive social impact. That is the one reason that we do it, and that's why we have a very talented team of consultants. So for us, social impact is about capacity building, it's about relationships, and it's about that old thing in the spectrum called informing decisions. So that's a little bit about us. So today, we're going to squash a whole lot into the next 35, 40 minutes. I'm going to hand you over first of all to Agata, who's going to give a little mini keynote speech. So we're going to squash that in there. And then Agata's going to throw back to me, and we're going to have a mini workshop. So you're all going to meet 7 new people that you don't know yet. You may know people that are similar to these 7 people, but they'll be coming to join us very soon. And then Niamh's going to give you a bit of a training package on some tools to work with hard-to-reach people around public spaces. So does that sound okay? It's going to be a bit, bit of a fast ride, and I hope you're all up to it. I'm sure you are. I think we've got the best gig of the conference, the first breakout session in the big room on day 1. So thank you, and I'm going to hand over to Agata.
So given I'm giving the mini keynote, I'll stand at the lectern. So one of the reasons why we decided to do our presentation today on engaging people around public spaces is that increasingly our clients are recognising the critical role that well-designed, well-programmed, accessible public spaces play in community building. Governments, developers and other organisations, including not-for-profits and commercial businesses, that have spaces that can be publicly accessible are asking us to have conversations with the community about how these spaces can be relevant and functional and ultimately become places where community can happen. So the other thing that's happening though is that as a nation we're having to reconsider what can and should be a public space. So what is a public space? Traditionally in Australia we've thought of public spaces as parks, ovals, public plazas or piazzas as they call them in Europe and sometimes here, and occasionally shopping malls when people aren't being moved on from them. However, as our cities and towns become more dense, not only do people have less private recreation space, so they're depending on public spaces more, but at the same time there is less and less space for the development of these big parks or plazas. So this means we need to think more broadly about what we're defining as a public space and where people can go. So we need to think about other parts of the urban environment, such as these up on the slide. So yes, parks and plazas, definitely still public spaces, and they're getting better and better as far as their design and programming, but we also need to think about how we're designing our streets, our footpaths, both inside and the surrounding edges of public buildings, nature strips, rail reserves, train stations, playgrounds, the list goes on. So they all should be the types of spaces where community can happen. So the ingredients that make public spaces successful are well documented, so we're not going to try and reinvent the wheel here. But through Kapir's work, we've observed that there are 4 elements that the community looks for in a public space and the things that make public spaces great. So these are, a great public space is functional, it's unifying, it's welcoming, and it's equitable. There are also other things that public spaces do as far as the economy goes and environmental sustainability, but today we're really focusing on what they do as far as community building goes. So to describe these further, I'm going to use Federation Square in central Melbourne as an example of a public space that has all of these elements. I've used it as an example because we're from Melbourne and we're proud of it, and it's also a space that a lot of you have either been to or are familiar with. Who is familiar with Fed Square? Surely all of you, yeah. So Fed Square gets over 9 million visitors a year, and they're not just tourists, it's become a really important place for gathering for Melburnians, and it's come to symbolise Melbourne. It is in a highly accessible location, it's right in central Melbourne on the river next to public transport, but there are other public spaces that are as accessible as Fed Square that don't get anywhere near the amount of visitation. So, good public spaces are functional. Different people come to Fed Square for a range of purposes, whether it's to meet friends, participate in a group activity, listen to a lecture, get some sun, exercise, or just be. The most successful contemporary public spaces have elements of programming. So as a lot of you will know, there's a lot of programming that goes on in the different facilities and open areas in Fed Square to maximise its utilisation and make it a day-night place. Good public spaces are also unifying. They allow people to come together. So Fed Square, as other good public spaces, has areas for both organised activity for groups to come together, as well as for incidental social interaction, which happens when someone's comfortable in a space and is able to spend time there and can be open to having those brief interactions with strangers. This is also a place where Melburnians come together. Many grassroots rallies are held and start at Fed Square every year, and it's also the canvas for over 30 multicultural festivals every single year. These places are also welcoming. People feel like they actually have a right to be there, and they feel comfortable there. They feel safe, and safe not only means their physical safety, but it also means they're able to be and express who they are without feeling like they're going to be threatened or moved on. And the physical environment is appealing. It's aesthetically pleasing. I know that there's lots of debate about the architectural merits of Federation Square, but it certainly provides a talking point, and there's different elements that appeal to different people at Pride, and you've got open spaces and you can get shelter from the elements if you need to as well. So most importantly, as far as we're concerned in terms of community building and Kapir's values, good public spaces are equitable. No matter who you are, where you're born, what your religion is, how much money you have or don't have, you feel like you have an equal right to be there, and you have the capacity to engage in a lot of what the space has to offer. And I'm notorious for forgetting to flick my slide, sorry. So there are things that you need to pay for at Fed Square. There are bars and restaurants, and you have to go and pay to see things at the Australian Centre of the Moving Image, but they also have free things. But there are also many activities that are free. So thousands of Melburnians come together to watch sporting events on the big screen, or families can take their children to see movies like Free Willy was screened this Sunday. So each of Federation Square's 9 million visitors are drawn there because of what we believe one or more of those four elements, which are the same elements that actually draw the community to other public spaces, whether it's a local playground or a park at the end of your street, or even hanging out at a train station and how you feel there. But each of these elements means something different for every single person, depending on their beliefs, where they've come from, and what their previous experience of public spaces have been. They're all, therefore, going to see different parts of public space differently. So going back to the Federation Square example, there's tiered stairs around the main open-air plaza, and if we reflect on those stairs, they're going to be seen differently by different individuals, all of these different individuals. So a mother with a toddler will see the stairs as something she can sit on and rest and have a break from walking around the city with a pram, but she might also see them as a safety risk for her toddler. The toddler's going to see the stairs as fun to run up and down on. A skateboarder is going to see those stairs as a great place to do tricks. I'm sure there's a formal way of saying skater tricks, but we'll call them tricks for now. A homeless person might see a flat and sheltered surface to sleep on. An elderly person or someone in a wheelchair might see those stairs as a barrier for movement around the place and might be a bit fearful of them. And a worker might see them as a place of refuge and to get some sun and to chill out on their lunch break. So what does all this mean for community engagement? If we're all looking at things differently, and we as practitioners have our own beliefs and values and a lens of looking at the world, how do we actually see what all of those individuals need to see and things that we need to translate into the design of spaces? I'll get Amy to take you through how Kapir does it.
Funny that. Thanks, Ag. Thank you for the mini keynote. So, as Agata pointed out, public spaces can make and break communities, really, because they're the places where people congregate, they interact and they engage. So when we engage around those public spaces, it's really important that we acknowledge what people see and what they don't see, the experiences that they're having, and also kind of their baggage, their engagement baggage or just their life baggage that they bring with them to those conversations. So Kapir has a 4-step process, and we love saying a 4-step process, but we actually do. I'm just going to look at Niamh. We do have a 4-step process that we use with architects, planners, urban designers and event managers. And what we try and do is when we look at who the community is and all those individuals and groups that make up a community, first of all, we look at the values of those people. So what is important to these people? What is going to get them to step up and participate in a conversation about the future of this place? Okay? Because their values is probably very different to my white middle class values. The next thing we look at are the experiences, and different types of people have different experiences, positive and negative, of public spaces. And that comes out in community engagement all the time. People have bad experiences of young people or homeless people or people doing things in the public amenities that they shouldn't be doing. And so all of those experiences need to be acknowledged. Some of them can really impact negatively on an engagement process and almost take over, and some of them can really build up the engagement process. We need to look at barriers to engagement. So what is stopping? What is stopping people actually stepping up and participating? And that could be lack of time, lack of knowledge, consultation fatigue, all those things that stop 99% of people participating in community engagement processes. Once we have a good idea of values, experiences and barriers, we can, as engagement specialists, we can actually plan for what those engagement opportunities are. Because you know that 80% is in the planning, 20% is in the doing. Get the planning right and you're going to probably do a very good engagement process. Not going to please everyone, will please most. So today, now it's workshop time. We're going to have about 12 minutes of meeting new people. But the first, if the clicker works, and the slide, no, the slide didn't load. Okay, you've all got some coloured sheets in front of you. Molly's just handing them out, or most of you do. There's 7 people that we will be engaging with today. So the 7 people are Joyce, Paul, Solomon, Warwick, Lee, Jack and Chris. And we've selected these people because we actually know them. We've worked with them on different projects in Melbourne around public spaces. And what we're going to ask you to do is, in a first very quick activity of about 7 or 8 minutes, is we want you to hold your coloured sheet up when you get it and find up to 4 people with the same coloured sheet as your own. We want you to have a conversation about that person. Of course, you have to make assumptions, but we all make assumptions every day when we work in community engagement about the people we're engaging with. And we want you to have a conversation, first of all, about their values. What are their values going to be? What can you presume about this person? What their experiences may have been, and then also what their barriers are to engagement. But we want you to stop there. So it's interesting the slide didn't load, but that's okay. In about 1 minute, you'll all have a coloured sheet in front of you. For those who do have a coloured sheet, I want you to get up and find up to 4 people with the same colour as you. And the instructions are on the slides for the first activity. No. Okay, I'm going to ask you, this is a speed workshop. I'm going to ask you to finish up that conversation. You may not have progressed it as much as you like, but it's okay. These people aren't actually real, I lied, but it just gives you a bit of an example about what's going on. What we're going to ask you to do, though, is finish up. Stand up, find one person with a different colour piece of paper. It would be great if it would be someone that you don't know. And share what you've learnt about your community member, and then have a conversation about those real opportunities for engagement around public spaces. And when we talk about engagement, we talk about the process or what, shiny new tool or technique we're going to use, but we also think about what elements of the public spaces will people want to talk about. There are some people that get very excited about talking about drainage or street seating or landscaping or public art. Other people, they only want to talk about accessibility. So talk about opportunities for engagement, both in terms of process and in content. So stand up, go and find your new friend with a different colour sheet of paper, and we'll just have 3 minutes. Over that side. Okay, I'll get you to finish up that conversation and invite you to take a seat wherever you are. We're on the home stretch of this first breakout session. So, looks like there's a lot of really great conversations. You can take a seat wherever you are, or if you'd like to stand up, that's okay. Okay. All right, so Niamh, you're standing near Jenny. What's going on
What a
over there?
coincidence.
Sorry, there's a few special friends in the room. Jenny, we're going to pick on you. So Niamh, looking over Jenny's shoulder, what can you see?
So Jenny has Joyce, and Joyce is our older person, and some of the values have been listed. I'm just going to steal this. Actually, you're going to have to help me with your handwriting. So the first one.
So we thought that Joyce would probably have. She looks like she's potentially of European descent. So she'd bring those traditional values, social values, moral values to play. She'd be concerned about her safety and security. That would be really valuable, and her economic security. She'd value no surprises. She'd want to know what was happening and that she wasn't going to be impacted by any changes. She'd be concerned about her family's future, so that would be of high value to her, and a sense of community and connectedness.
Should we talk about some of Joyce's experiences? So, Jenny, what are some of Joyce's experiences in public spaces, if you're Joyce?
So again, if we presume that Joyce is of European descent, potentially, an older white person living in Australia, she's experienced a change in an increased use of public spaces and less availability of spaces that people can share. There's no more paddocks, as an example. The population's increasing. She'd be experiencing a concern of danger in public spaces. She wouldn't feel as comfortable as she's getting older, she's becoming vulnerable. She'd also experience technological changes, even in the public spaces, as we were talking about Federation Square. It's quite different. Her experiences have been a place of connection, like the village commons, and she's probably experienced public open spaces as places for recreation where you came and the children kicked a ball, as an example.
Okay, there's a lot of detail there. Thank you, Jenny. So we won't go into barriers, but Michelle Feenan, you've also got Joyce. I think you might have actually worked with Jenny, but what were some of the opportunities that you had?
We didn't get to discussing a lot of this, but some of the opportunities we thought were mixed generational gatherings, so bringing some of those different groups together.
Yeah, great, thank you. Does anyone else want to share who they discussed? Hand up. Community Engagement Conference, you're all meant to have your hands up. You're like participating. Oh, we've got one. And Niamh's going to do the sprint across the room with the microphone. So you've got Green, you've got Solomon. Yeah, how did you go with Solomon in terms of, first of all, values?
Thank you. We identified some potential values as that Solomon might value the opportunity to participate in a democratic way and value a sense of freedom and wanting a better life as a refugee, wanting to give back and be a good citizen. When it comes to experiences, we thought that they could be many and varied, from public spaces being a place of danger and conflict to somewhere that there could be family and friends and a communal meeting space. It could be an experience of face-to-face interaction where there's access to services or events. It may involve being covered up or being exposed, and it could involve gendered differences as well. When it came to barriers, we felt there's a potential for nervousness about having a say, language and cultural differences, feeling different, access to whatever the channels might be if they're not appropriate, and perhaps some economic barriers as well. Yeah. We didn't get to opportunities.
Didn't get to opportunities. Normally you need a little bit more time. So you do get kind of, what you now probably understand the steps in the methodology that we use. But we always sort of test all of this because it is based on assumptions, and we do have to strip away our own biases when we work with different types of people. We take it a step further and we go out and test it with our community as well, because this is what we think and feel from sort of a deeper dive into understanding our community, but we often go out and talk to different groups which represent some of these hard to reach people in the community. So we've got about 10 minutes, I think, left. Jamie, timekeeper, 5 minutes. Okay, so no pressure, Niamh. Niamh's going to do a 5-minute training session for you on some tools and techniques that we regularly use.
Thank you. Okay, so from Agata's presentation and what the activity we've just done now, we've learnt why this is really important. So I'm going to tell you really quickly about how. But talking about how, there's a couple of things that we need to keep in mind. So in presenting these tools, these aren't the only tools you can use. These are just tools that we've found to be invaluable in our practice to engaging with a diverse range of community members. And thinking about our role as the engagement practitioner, our job is to be a conduit between the project and the community we're engaging with. And in our role as a conduit, we need to translate complex information about the project into a digestible form for our community members. But then we also need to translate what they have to say from what they share with us about their experience or values into project outcomes. So a couple of tools. I'm going to present 4 tools to mirror our 4-step methodology. And the first one I'd like to talk about is community mapping. So community mapping is a knowledge sharing exercise between the practitioner and the community members. It enables the technical practitioner to experience a local space through the feet and eyes of the community member and to understand what's important to them about that space. In our practice, we usually do this in the spaces that the engagement is occurring in, and we do this in a number of ways. We can do it as simple as using maps, and we can mark it up with the community members, and they can show us where they walk or where they pause for different activities. We can use chalk, and we can walk through the space and map our routes and pause and draw to describe the activities that we're doing. Or we can use digital mapping platforms as well. So doing mapping exercises, they're a highly visual tool and they provide an instant feedback loop. They enable us to see points of agreement and points of difference about different values and experiences community members have had in that space. But they also teach us a couple of things about the space. They teach us about how safe people feel at different times of the day. What are the uses that are happening in that space? In one of our projects, we found parkour and Tai Chi happening in the exact space, but not at the same time. We learn about the conditions of what it's like to sit in that space, if it's cold, if it's hot, if it's windy. We understand where people like to sit, and if they like to sit in particular seats for people watching. And we also understand if this space is being used for other means than what it was traditionally intended to, such as playgrounds, and if there's bollards or statues that children are using to play. So our next tool is prototyping. Prototyping for us is about testing a new experience with the community members who will use that space. It's not about testing the final product, but the concept of the ideas. And in some of our projects, we've used prototyping as a way to test ideas generated from the community in previous engagement stages. And for us, we've found that's really important because it's demonstrated that we've heard and we're willing to test what the community is suggesting for us about their space. In a recent project in Melbourne, we use prototyping in a number of ways, and it's really quite simple and it can be cheap in terms of testing an idea. So we were in a busy urban environment in an underused park that's next to some office buildings. So we use buckets of water, small and large plantings to recreate original wetland environment. We installed Wi-Fi to create a third office room for our office workers. We created new activities in the space by putting table tennis tables out. But we also gave more flexibility into the space and putting furniture that the community members could move around to suit their needs and where they're comfortable in sitting. So we learned a lot from the prototyping exercise. We learned what the community is willing to accept in terms of changing their space. We understood from them about the experience they had in having a new experience through doing different activities in the space. And we also understood, or we were able to begin to have a conversation about change and take them on the journey of change from the beginning of the project rather than just landing a draft master plan on them. And importantly for our client, we were able to give them confidence that what the community was suggesting was feasible in that new space. Our third tool, how am I going for time? Oh, okay, Petra style. Community champions. So for us, we use community champions on a range of our projects, but the key to having really successful community champions is empowering them. And as Amy mentioned, we use people that are known within the community who represent particular cohorts. So there's a couple of key things. We need to empower them by building up their knowledge about the project and being able to communicate about complex challenges or opportunities. We need to give them the tools to engage with their networks, and we also need to help them capture our data for us so that it can inform project outcomes. Our last one, storytelling. So in our exercise today, we've done a bit of storytelling, and storytelling helps us to establish common ground. It helps us to understand ourselves, the people around us, but also the places we're in. And a couple of key things that we can learn from storytelling is about areas of change, areas of agreement within the community and developing common ground. We can, as the practitioner, it's a way for us to connect with our audience and share our experience of the space as well as understanding another person's perspective. But also, we learn about the space in terms of people's experiences, and from those experiences we can understand, is it positive, is it negative, but also what are their aspirations for change. So these are just 4 tools that I've presented, and there's a couple of things I'd like to just for you to bear in mind. One of the things is keeping in mind where you're at in the process of your engagement project. Typically, we would use these tools where we're at the beginning, where we're having broader conversations around values and experiences and aspirations for the future. Also thinking about are these the right tools, as Amy mentioned. Have you gone out and done your research? Have you done what we've done today and put yourself in the feet of others to understand if it's going to be right or is it culturally appropriate? And the third thing is the engagement practitioner. We need to be really open and willing to learn and to listen from our community to understand their experiences and values of a public space. So that's our... Can I have 1 more minute, Jamie? We've just got a couple, 30 seconds. So some community service announcements from Kapia. I'll keep this super quick. So in 2017, we'll be opening a co-working space in our office in Carlton. We'd invite you to come and work with us if you're in Melbourne. And we're opening that space to help support our sole practitioners in Melbourne, to give them a space where they can come together with other practitioners. We're also hiring, so if you're interested at working at Kapia, come talk to Amy, particularly when she's on the dance floor later. She'll be very receptive. And the third thing, we've got a couple of resources we'd like to share with you. So we have our Inclusive Engagement Toolkit, as well as our Engagement Triangle. So on behalf of Amy and Agata and I, we'd just like to say thank you, and we hope we haven't bombarded you with too much, and we're here if you'd like to talk to us a bit more.